up, guys? It's another Zapp Comics radio podcast. I know it's been a little while. I apologize for that. I'm now having 2 kids and a full-time job and a full-time family. It takes a lot of time, so I apologize if we haven't been able to do more of these, but there'll be more coming, I promise. One of my favorite books of all time is a little book called Invincible from Image Comics. I'm not sure if you've heard of it. It's by Robert Kirkman, which I know you've heard of him. Back in like 2007, I really got into this book because one of my customers, Ralph Pryor, kind of spoiled it for me, but he spoiled it for me in a good way, so I wouldn't read the book, and I've loved this book ever since. And my good friend Ryan Reset, who's been on here a few times, coming to you from Massachusetts via FaceTime. What's up, Rye?
Good morning. How are you?
Yeah, it's like 6:30 in the morning. It's the only time we can get together and do this, but it's fine. We're both morning people. Actually, I'm a morning person. I'm not sure if you are. I know you're a night person.
I am not a morning person at all. I do this strictly for you.
See, it's all about love. Love for Invincible would be great. So, before Walking Dead really blew up, Invincible was kind of on par with it as far as when the book came out. It was a tryout little superhero book that kind of, I think it like won. Ryan, wasn't it like a make your own superhero type of thing for Image, and they did a bunch of them, and it was the only one that lasted? Isn't that how it came out?
As far as I know, yeah.
Yeah, it was like a one-shot thing, and it worked. And it just got a regular series. It was created by Kirkman and Corry Walker, who only did the first 7 issues of art for whatever reason. It's kind of like with Walking Dead, where Moore only did a handful of issues, and then Adlard's been doing it forever. But Ryan Ottley does the art now. I mean, Corey Walker's art's great, but Ottley's art is beautiful. I love his art.
Ottley was definitely Ottley. I actually met Ottley at a Comic-Con, and it was after that controversial tweet that he had started doing, or actually I think it was like a blog post that he was doing where he burned some of his old art.
Oh, that's right, because he didn't like them.
He found it cathartic to kind of burn some of the stuff that he doesn't like. He's one of those guys who looks at his art and sees only the flaws. So him and his friend got together and they were burning their old art, and people were actually angry and being like, "You could have sold that and then, donate the money to charity." And you always have to people always have to twist the knife a little bit.
Yeah, I don't understand why everybody has to tell you what to do. Listen, I would have sold it myself, but I understand that he doesn't like it. He doesn't want it to exist. Unfortunately, it's existing in print form. So he goes, I don't want anybody to have the originals. He destroyed them. It's his work. He can do whatever he wants with it.
It was so funny, too, because he goes, I really didn't see the big deal. And, he goes, and then all of a sudden I started getting all these angry emails. And I'm like, man, I hit a nerve. Took him by total shock.
Yeah, so I love Ottley. His art's like, it's kind of like Ed McGuinness-y, I guess. It's very clean. It's cartoony, but not, and it's very clean. I love clean art, and it just works. It's the colors on it are amazing. I love his art. His art is really what draws me into the book still. It's beautiful.
He is one of those people who has, he was like born to draw comics.
Yeah, awesome. All right, so early on, the reason why I love this book so much is because nobody I know was able to read Spider-Man from the beginning. Obviously, you can if you get someone older, or you can do it yourself if you buy trades. But you all know who the character is. You know his flaws. You know his story. You can't. There's no new characters coming out that are gonna have a build up like Peter Parker did, because you just can't do that nowadays. Everything has to be spoon-fed to the audience, and everything has to be wrapped up in 5 issues. Where back in the day, you could have it, it take forever and just build up storyline after storyline without reboots. And of course, Amazing Spider-Man people absolutely adore, because the way his world is set up, he's a regular kid. He gets bit by the spider, and everything changes, but his entire life changes because everything's connected with the Osborns and Flash Thompson, and obviously.
He was so relatable, though. He was the kid who was always getting picked on,
Yeah, but like the way everything comes back to him, with his uncle dying, and he doesn't just have superpowers. Everything crumbles around him, and he has to make it work. because it's not just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be Batman at night and come home the next day. You know what I mean? He's like, I'm Spider-Man, and I'm ruining everything, and yet this stuff's great, this stuff's awful. I don't know what to do. I keep messing up, then I make amends, and I mess up again. You know, it's very, you can kind of relate to it, I guess, in a way. It kind of gives you a feel like if it did really happen to you, even though it never would. But I think that's what people's attachment to the book is, or to the character.
Well, he always kept things light.
Yes.
That was even though things were going and crumbling, his world was crumbling around him, he's going to throw in, a funny remark while fighting the Vulture.
Yeah, so that's why this book is just like that. When I read Invincible, especially the first, 4 or 5 trades, it really reads like I feel like I'm reading Peter Parker. Not that it's a ripoff of Parker or anything like that. It just has that feel to it. If you like Spider-Man, I think you'll love. It's kind of like if Peter Parker was Superman, in a way, because the way the attachment to the character, you really feel for the kid. He's very likable. His name's Mark Grayson, by the way. Very likable. His father is a superhero, Omni-Man, from another planet, and they're trying to restore peace to the entire galaxy. He's a family man. He works, and he plays catch with him outside. And Mark's trying to he's waiting for his superpowers to develop because his mother's human, and his father's a Superman. So he's trying to wait. He's waiting for his powers to develop. He's going to get them. He hasn't got them yet. So he's kind of waiting for like puberty to hit to get it.
Well, the way that the comic actually begins, you don't even know that Mark is going to get his superpowers.
Yeah, exactly.
All you know is that his father is a superhero, and he's constantly coming home completely beat up, and he's just like, I need a shower, and he just kind of like walks by. The mother is that kind of silent, suffering wife who is always heartbroken to see her husband so beat up, but also knows this is part of the job. So then Mark is working at a fast food joint. That's what he's doing. Like,
which listen, pretty much every kid in this country does at some point,
Right. And then all of a sudden, when he goes to throw away the trash one night, he goes to throw it in the dumpster, and instead it just keeps on going.
Yeah.
He throws it up, it just soars.
Yeah, and it's cool because he rushes home to tell them like I got it, like it's like he just got the lottery ticket or something like that. He hit it. And the best part about this book for me is when I got back into comics in the mid-2000s, I was only superheroes. It was Marvel, DC. Image to me was still, Savage Dragon and Spawn and Cyberforce, and which wasn't bad. It just was a part of the 90s that I wasn't into anymore, and I was like, yeah, Image doesn't have everything I want. Walking Dead was out. I wasn't into it at the time because I'm not a zombie guy. I eventually got into Walking Dead, and I ended up loving it. But so when I found this book, it was like, oh, it's Image. I have no interest in this book. It's not related to anything like that. I want to stay with Marvel and DC. I like my traditional superheroes. I like everything to connect. And then once I started reading this book, it instantly became my favorite superhero book. I loved every character in this. There's a team, the teen team, with all those great characters like Rexplode and Robot and Duplicate, and I love Monster Girl. Alan the Alien is one of the coolest side characters. I love him.
Yeah.
Alan. So and then later on you get Adam Eve, who's kind of like his Mary Jane but with superpowers. So it's really, I don't mean to keep comparing it to Spider-Man. It just has that feel to Spider-Man. And so when you're reading it, you're like, oh, this is Spider-Man just in a different universe or a different setting. It just feels like Parker,
Well, this is exactly how you kind of drew me in. You were like, it's the best are you reading Invincible? And I said, no. You said, it's the best superhero comic out there right now. It's exactly like the early Spider-Man issues. You got to read it. And I was like, all right. So then I started reading it, and I remember I was like, oh, man, Corry, this is where I'm at. Are you still reading it? And you went, yeah, no.
Well, I didn't drop it because I didn't like it. At the time, I believe I just met my wife. We were moving. I pretty much stopped reading altogether as far as reading a regular title. So, and it went from, the book was very simple at first, but when it gets on to around issue, I think, is it 50, with the Ultramite War?
Right.
it gets really dense, which is fine. But it went from a very quick, fun read to like, oh crap, I need to pay attention because I can't. If I don't really read this book and I just flip through it, I'm not going to know what's going on. So I didn't stop reading it because I didn't like it. I just stopped reading it because I couldn't invest the time and give it the attention I needed to give. But I always paid attention to it because all my favorite customers still read it, so I always knew what was going on.
But that was the thing, too, with the early issues. It was a quick and fun read, and every kind of new character that he introduced, it wasn't like there was this whole backstory that he had to go into. You know, Alan the Alien, it was the father goes, oh, by the way, you know, there's an alien going to be coming around. You got to fight him just to make sure he knows that the Earth is, protected. Don't worry about it. Just fight him, and then you'll be all set. So then Alan the Alien comes around, and they're fighting. And one of my favorite things was the fact that Mark had to then, Alan punched him. He went back into Earth's atmosphere to take a breath, and then ran back out to like keep on fighting him. And it was just so light and funny, and it was just simple. Like they didn't have to give you a backstory of Alan the Alien. You just were like, okay, all right. So there's an alien coming, and this is the new character, and he's kind of cool. It's funny, and that was what it was.
Yeah, and Alan the Alien is the nicest being or whatever in this entire universe, which is the best part about it. We're going to spoil something here, so if you really want to read the book without any spoilers, I would suggest to stop listening, because this is a major, major part of the book, but it's also a major part of the book you need to know in order to continue with our conversation. So we're going to talk about Omni-Man, which is what got me into the book, because I know I mentioned before, Ralph, a great customer of mine, he moved to Georgia, but he's the one who got me onto Walking Dead and Invincible. He was like, you should read Invincible. I was like, nah, it doesn't interest me. And he's like, he just started blurting about the book, and when he told me about his dad, I was like, what? Omni-Man, of course, is the peacekeeper. He's of Ultramite. They live for thousands and thousands of years. They're pretty much invincible. You can't kill them. We're trying to set peace for the entire planet, entire universe. And he's Earth's taking care of Earth. And it turns out that that's wrong. He doesn't love his wife. He looked at his wife like a little pet. He has no interest in his son, and he's actually trying to get recruit Earth for their part of their army or system. And he's actually the ultimate bad guy.
It's actually he did have interest in his son, except that when his son didn't agree with.
Yeah, well, he said stay with me or I kill you. Basically.
Right, and then all of a sudden it was like the son's like, no, I'm not gonna fight with the Viltrumites. Earth is my home, and he's like, all right, so be it. And then what follows is probably one of the most vicious, violent, and graphic battles I've ever seen in comics, and it makes it even that much worse. It's because his father is doing it.
Oh yeah, and he's doing it, and he's not holding back at all. I mean, it's not like, okay, you really make me mad. I'm super mad at you, and I start fighting you. If it goes to a certain point where it comes to blows, I'm not going to punch you as hard as I want because I know you and I you're my friend. But if somebody's attacking my kid, I'm just going to kill him. So he's acting like he's going to kill the guy. He wasn't holding back at all. He's like, I don't care who you are, you're going to die. And it was brutal. And the Otley's work with the blood and the way the teeth come out and eyeballs, and it's cartoony yet like gory but clean. I don't know how to explain it. It's really cool.
It was one of those things too. Like I said, it took you by such surprise.
Yes.
So you're reading it, and even though you kind of told me too, you kind of spoiled it in the same way that
you kind of have to spoil it to get you to get it, because other than that, when you just say it's like this, you're like, okay, it happens fast. It's early on.
So then all of a sudden, you're reading this, and it was, like I said, it was graphic, and it was pretty amazing to read. But at the same time, without that, it's almost like that big shock and the twist all of a sudden in The Sixth Sense,
yes.
Where all of a sudden, they say, hey, by the way, I see dead people, and then all of a sudden Bruce Willis ends up being dead. Oh my god, I did another spoiler, Corey.
Listen, that movie's like 15 years old. It's okay. There's a window, and once you pass that window, it's good. I don't. People need to stop.
But it was something that was so unheard of.
Well, it was unheard of, and it was like the way the book just took off after it, as far as how everything went down, and with even the team he was on, the way that changed. I'm not going to spoil too much of that, because that's actually later on, and actually really Cecil. His boy Cecil, who's kind of like, I don't know how to explain Cecil. He's like kind of like the one man of he's like kind of like Nick Fury is in Avengers.
Right.
He's like the old guy. He's like an agent. You got to go visit him, and that's where he gets his costumes from, and his orders, and he kind of cleans up. It's kind of like, if you watch Incredibles, it's kind of like the guys that kind of come in and take care of all the mess, and they kind of cover it up for you. Cecil's like that guy, but times 1,000. He's cool. Cecil's great. I mean, and the stuff that he goes through, and up and down, left and right with all them, and I don't want to spoil everything in the book, and the Adam Eve stuff is great, and then later on, when his father comes back with and Invincible as a brother, all this stuff is really interesting.
This is what I really appreciated about Adam Eve too. She first started out as that Mary Jane, long-legged, kind of model type. And as the book has gone on, one of the more realistic but also hilarious, and then kind of things that I appreciated, was that she has gone through all these changes. When Mark left during the Viltrumite War, when he came back, she had gained a ton of weight. So
yeah, and if you remember too, she was, I'm not going to say who and what, but remember, she was in a abusive relationship too.
Yes, yeah.
So,
we shouldn't say who.
I'm not going to say who, but there was things went on where she was actually, it was domestic, violence, which is, but I know it doesn't happen much in comics, but it was pretty detailed.
Well, it wasn't that it was just like a domestic violence relationship. She was a teenager.
Yes.
Still really young, so that was kind of where the new angle was coming from. And again, this is the kind of stuff that actually does happen, which he, Kirkman brilliantly, writes about in it without making it too heavy-handed, but at the same time doing it without making it a joke.
Yes.
And so, so she was there, and then all of a sudden her and Mark got together, and like I said, when he came back, and she was like, I think the scene was, and if I remember this correctly, he walks in, he's like, Eve, and she's actually on the couch eating ice cream. And he's like, what's the matter? And she's like, don't look at me, and she was just so shocked and embarrassed about how much weight she had gained. And Mark was like, I don't care. I've been gone for this long, and I just love you, and I don't care about this or that. I mean, I love you. And then when she got married, and even, or when they got married and later on as their relationship progressed, she never became that model kind of type girl again.
No, and in a way, she and Mark they had major problems, any marital problem, which would happen if this was real, because of the way, his situation was, not being around and, having the kid. And, I mean, it gets, and some certain characters come back and try and spoil things, and there's actually a very, very interesting rape scene in one of these books. And it's not, I'm not going to spoil it, because I'm not going to say who and what, but rape is the worst thing on earth, but it's just very different.
I remember being in a comic shop when the issue came out. Now, it's interesting because some people have a different a viewpoint, a different thought process as they're reading it. But I remember two guys coming in, and like you said, it's one of the more horrific things that could ever happen in this world.
To anybody, a male or female, I don't care what it is. Either way, it's awful.
And the gentleman that had come into the comic shop, they were talking, and he said, "Oh, did you read Invincible like 110?" And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "The rape scene?" He was like, "Yeah, I thought it was kind of cheesy. I thought it was kind of superhero rape, but like man's fantasy about rape." What? And I actually took a little bit of offense to it, because I said I thought it was pretty horrific. I thought it was written very well from a man's standpoint of if anything happened to me, because it's one of those things that doesn't get talked about, that men, and it is a very, it's a minority kind of thing that could happen, but men do get raped.
Oh, listen, of course they do. And either way, I don't care what it is. It's still rape.
Yeah, and it wasn't written in a sexy way.
It wasn't, man. It wasn't at all.
It was
evil. It was evil. Like, it was pure evil, and there was no remorse, and it was like, yeah, don't worry, it's going to happen again.
And the way that the attacker handles it, you're not happy about any kind of situation, or, like, when I read it, I thought Kirkman wrote it brilliantly, that he made it, nothing about it, in my opinion anyways, nothing about it was sexual.
No, not at all.
It was something where, you kind of almost knew it was going to happen, but it also stayed in character of the Viltrumites. I mean, these characters, this whole race of aliens, they are probably like the scum of the earth. Not the scum of the earth, but the scum of the universe. They're people who feel like if they want something, they should be able to take it.
Yeah, they don't care. They're like, no, it's mine. I want this. It's mine.
Right. So yeah. Actually, and I was actually going to mention, like you mentioned, the whole thing about his brother. I think there's two series where, like, a new addition to the family has not really ruined the whole story. A lot of times when they add in a family member, like they did with Growing Pains. When Chrissy came in, it was never the same.
No, it was awful.
So, and then they tried to add in Luke, and you're going like, "Oh my Lord!"
That was even worse. Listen, to this day, I still pretty much hate Leonardo DiCaprio, no matter how great of an actor he is, because of his role in Growing Pains.
Because he ruined Growing Pains. But I thought like there was a Angel is one of those ones where all of a sudden Angel had a son, and I thought it was going to ruin the series, and it was written amazingly. And this is another one. Kirkman, again, it speaks to how brilliant of a writer he is. Mark having a brother suddenly brought in this whole new era of superhero stories about his brother, who wasn't truly he wasn't half Viltrumite, half Earthling. He was half Viltrumite, half and I can't remember the name of the race. But
I don't know what it was. It was like two characters from Star Wars from different planets having a kid. That's what it was. It's like Admiral Akbar having a kid with like
Princess Leia.
Princess Leia.
It's a trap. But he grew up on such a rapid rate that he's going through his teenage years when Mark is trying to teach him about how to be a superhero, and now he's going through that struggle, where he's pushing back and everything, and it was so much fun to read.
Oh, I love that. Up until like issue 100, I really was still paying attention to that book. It was really, really well done. It's still good now. The problem with Invincible was Invincible and Walking Dead were kind of like on par with each other. They pretty much came out at the same time. The trades sold very similar. And then all of a sudden, Invincible just got super, super delayed. It would be months upon months before an issue would come out. And I'm not sure if it was because of Kirkman or because of Otley or what was taking up. Because this is before Walking Dead blew up. So I don't know what the delay was. I never really looked into it. It just took forever to come out. And it was frustrating. So people kind of like lost interest in it.
It still doesn't come out on a regular.
No, and the thing that I hate now is like obviously Walking Dead is beyond big, but when the new Walking Dead trade comes out, like we'll get like 40 or 50 of them in, and we sell through them in a few weeks. The new Invincible trade comes in, I get like 5, and I'll sell a couple right away, and the other ones stay on the shelf, and then people eventually get to it. And it's weird because that used to be like a big release, was when the new Invincible trade was coming out, and it's not anymore. But people still love the book. What I did was, I'm not sure if you've been in our shop recently, Ryan, but I made an entire section just of $10 trades, which is almost entirely Image, because Image does a wonderful job of the first volume of the trades being $10, which Walking Dead used to always be $10 until it got so big it didn't matter. Now it's a $15 trade, which is fine. But so many people started reading it because it was $10, first 6 issues, which a lot happens, and it really gets you hooked in the book. But for some reason, I don't know why, Invincible Volume 1 is $12.99. I don't know why. It doesn't make any sense. So what I did was, I am always going to have it at $10 in our store. So I make very little money off it. I don't care. I change the price, and I slap it on there, and I put it in the $10 section. Volume 1 is always going to be $10 in my shops, because that book is that good, and it deserves to be... I want people to be exposed to it and read it, and especially it's so good. I don't understand why it's not $10, because it's such an easy sell when it's $10. You know,
and it like those first 7 issues like hook you like no book like hooks.
Oh yeah,
people today.
It's like Walking Dead. It's like Walking Dead issue 6 when the whole thing with Shane happens. It hooks you in. You're like, what just happened? This is what, you know, and then it goes on, and that's how Invincible is. You know, you just once you get it, you're not like, okay, I'm done. You're like, okay, when's the next one?
See, and I'd like to talk about that a little bit. All right, so you know, Kirkman has famously said that if Walking Dead, if he knew it was going to be what it was, he wouldn't have killed Shane off so quickly. It wouldn't have been issue number 6. He would have drawn it out.
But he didn't know how long you know, who knew of the series? It wasn't a big selling series, so, you know, who knew?
But one of my things was, one of the reasons why the book was so brilliant is because things happened at a really fast pace. It wasn't drawn out. And that was one of the things about Invincible, is that things seemed to really just happen over and over again. There was no, like, build-up, except for when it came to the Viltrumite War. Like, they had been talking about it since issue, like, was it 6 or 7 when the father, you know, revealed what his true intentions were. They had been building this up, and it was issues like in the 70s when the Viltrumite War happened. And keep in mind, like, the delays were, you know, as you said, annoying, but like I was dealing with it because it was such a great book to read. And then all of a sudden the Viltrumite War happens. Now this is what bothered me. Were you still reading it when the Viltrumite War?
Yeah, that's basically when I stopped.
And I think that's when a lot of people stopped, because there was this big buildup of, this is going to be this epic war, this is going to be what happens, and it's going to be nuts. And so then you start reading it, and then like the first couple issues, Mark, in spoilers, if anybody's going to want to know what happens here, you know, tune out for like a minute or so here, because Mark gets hit and almost cut in half by like the lead Viltrumite. He gets almost cut in half with his organs, like his lower intestines spilling out, and the father takes Mark out of the fight. He brings him to a planet so that he can heal. But for the next like 2 or 3 or 4 issues, it's all about Mark healing. So the war is going on, but we don't even know what's going on, because we're sitting there watching Mark heal on this planet. But those 4 or 5 issues took almost a year to come out.
I compare it to Star Wars. Forever you heard this legendary Clone Wars.
Oh, yeah.
And then all of a sudden they released the prequels, and it's like, that was the Clone Wars I've been hearing for, you know, decades about? No thanks. So that was a lull. And like I said, I think if it wasn't delayed, it wouldn't have been that big of a deal. But like when you're waiting for an issue, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, nothing happened. I can't. And I remember his slogan in 2009 was "On Time in '09," and all the issues came out in '09 because he wanted to make sure that it worked, and then it went back to being delayed.
Yeah, and listen, I get it. Like, people will wait for a book, but at the same time, when you promise this huge epic battle, and there's a year of a guy healing on a planet, I mean, that's not delivering. And this is why I think that he, again, I can't tell Kirkman how to do his job, because obviously he's doing fine without me, but but really, I think anyways, like, that was like the crux of a lot of people leaving, because like you said, at one point people were reading Invincible and Walking Dead at the same level.
Yeah.
And then when Walking Dead kind of exploded, Invincible was kind of like left behind, and it was a shame, because it was as well written as anything else that Kirkman has done.
Yeah, and the thing is too, I know Kirkman. Everybody knows Kirkman from Walking Dead and Marvel Zombies and like Battle Pope and whatnot. He loves superheroes, and this is one of the most perfectly well done superhero characters in books. I mean, obviously you had a little lull with the Ultimate War. Every book, every writer has had a bad little stint. This book is phenomenal, and it's because he truly loves superheroes.
And what's funny too is I remember the Urim. I was reading it in one of the collections. He said that originally Corry Walker, the penciler, and when him and Corry Walker were creating the book, Corry Walker didn't realize, because he wasn't a comic book artist. He was Kirkman's friend who knew how to draw really well, and when he's doing the book, it was kind of like a shell-shocking kind of moment where he realized how much work it is to bring out a monthly title.
Oh, yeah.
There was constant delays in the beginning, and then when Otley took over the book, it was coming out so much faster, because Otley is this natural artist who's very quick and very good, like right away. So I remember Kirkman said something along the lines of, at first it took me by shock how quick the new books were coming out, and I realized, oh, this is what it's supposed to be like. But then it's now Otley's the one waiting for the new scripts from Kirkman, who's got a full plate, but at the same time, that's why Invincible suffers so much. Yeah,
and Kirkman has said, and I love him for this, he's the only one that will ever write Invincible, and Invincible will never stop. He's going to write it. He said he's going to write it until he dies, and then somebody else can take over.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Because he said that. I think I read something very similar to what you were just saying. He hopes Invincible goes on forever, where it's like he hopes, much like Amazing Spider-Man, it gets passed on to the next person and the next person and lasts, much like Spider-Man. Whereas Walking Dead, he wants to be the only one to ever write the comic, and when he dies, he wants the comic to die with him.
Yeah, with Invincible, he wants it to have life forever, but not until he's gone.
Right, yeah. Right.
And the thing is Kirkman's a young guy, so he can write this for a long time. I think he's younger than us. I think he's in his mid-30s, isn't he?
He's something. Yeah. He's a young guy.
Yeah, so which is awesome. I love it. And we have sold, since I made it $10, we sold quite a few volume 1s, and I've noticed some people starting to trickle in to get 2, 3, and 4. So I'm hoping it's never going to get back up there. This is obviously there's a budget constraint. I don't think it would work as a movie, but this would be a really, really good TV show.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This is one of those that you read it and it goes quick. So then you grab 2, and then you grab 3, and then you keep on going, and the characters get more complex, and they keep introducing new aliens that I absolutely love. Who's the Beast one?
I can't remember his name, but he's cool.
Yeah, and these characters don't go away. It's not like a one-of where all...
Oh, no, they come back. They might go away. They come back, though. Everybody comes back.
Yeah, that's the thing. They stay... he really knows how to write a universe that connects all these characters together.
And too, on the side note, just the progress and the rise and fall of his father. It's very much like a major athlete or actor who was on top, fell in hard... Like a Robert Downey Jr. He was on top of the world, fell down. He was like in people's backyards. His career was over. Iron Man comes out, and now he's back up top again. Omni-Man's very, very much like that, where he just goes up and down, up and down.
He's more like John Travolta.
Okay.
John Travolta was on top of the world, and then, he's doing Look Who's Talking Now, and then all of a sudden Pulp Fiction came out, and it was like, yay! And then all of a sudden Battlefield Earth came out, and they were like, uh-oh.
Battlefield Earth. Oh my god, that was one of the biggest bombs in the history of the box office.
And deservedly so, because that movie is terrible. But one of the things I actually really enjoy about Invincible is that it's not, it started off very Amazing Spider-Man-ish, where, the villain came and he fought the villain and he won, and then okay, great. And he was always making, the snarky comments and making things light. But then, as things were progressing, it wasn't so cut and dry of who the villain was anymore.
No, and especially now, deep on, there's a major villain, and it's nobody we even mentioned yet.
Yeah, but even so, at one point, Cecil, he considered, Cecil was almost the villain.
Yeah.
Because his viewpoint and Mark and his views were clashing, and he was like, "But this is I'm more concerned about the security of the United States," and he's like, "But this is going against what's right," and he's like, "Well, we kind of make up the idea of what's right," and he's like, "Well, not anymore," and then of course now he's battling the government. And the government has way more resources than Mark does.
Yeah.
And then at one point, that character, the Beast character that I was talking about, he wants to lay waste to an entire city. And Mark's like, no, I'm going to stop you. And then through the arguments back and forth in the battle, Beast actually convinces Mark what he's doing is actually right.
No, I remember. It was great.
And Mark's like, yeah, you know what? Go ahead. And you were like, whoa! It was so... Again, Kirkman deserves all the credit in the world for being able to write a very original story of things that you haven't seen before. Like I said, this is not cut and dry, black and white villain hero.
No, it's not.
People come in, the new stories come in, and you don't know how it's going to end out.
No, and also, too, there's one where he's flying into all different dimensions, and you see, Batman's hand, you see, Spawn's cape. He's bouncing through all these different worlds, and, I think you see a Wolverine claw. It's funny, because he's, bouncing around. I forget who it is that's doing it to him, but he's, bouncing back in all these dimensions.
Yeah.
Because, he goes into, he's connected to the Savage Dragon super team. Whatever they're called. I can't remember what they're called. Oh, man. I think it was an Eric Larson book, with the Super Patriot and all them.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then, I know Image United kind of fell apart, but he was, obviously part of that. But I like Invincible. His costume is very... It's like a mesh between, the Incredibles costumes, the early ones before they changed to orange, and, Superman without a cape. It's very, but also 90s Cyclops. But it just works.
Well, can I tell you, I didn't even realize that the costume was an eye until I actually looked at it, and I think it was when the costume change happened.
When they made it that dark blue, which I didn't like. I didn't like that one. But
yeah, when they decided they were going to do the costume change, and I suddenly looked at it and I went, oh, it's an eye for Invincible. Okay, I get it now. And
the thing I like about, too, the way Kirkman writes it, he writes it very similar to the way Byrne used to write, She-Hulk. It's a lot of it's tongue-in-cheek, and he'll, and it pokes fun at things, too. It doesn't want you to take it seriously, even though serious things do happen in it. It's a really fun book. Even though it gets very dark at points, it's fun. You get, a lot of laugh-out-loud moments reading this book.
That's what makes all the... I think that's what kind of makes these things bearable, because it can't be so heavy-handed all the time.
No.
Comedy is what kind of... even with my storytelling, sometimes when I tell my stories that have morals, and you're trying to teach the kids something at the end, I keep it light and I keep them laughing. Because when you're laughing, you don't notice how much time is going by, or you also don't notice those, serious moments so much. They're still there, but you're kind of waiting for the laugh. And so it helps, it helps ingest all of that drama that's going on.
Yeah, too. Yeah, and you also just want to hear some bad real-world news at the same time, though. You want to make, like you said, make it kind of light especially for, if most of you don't know, Ryan is a storyteller for children. He goes to schools and libraries, and he tells stories, for a living, which is wonderful because he doesn't stop talking ever, which is great. So, on that end, do you ever bring superhero stuff into your stories or no?
Actually, this year, the summer reading program was Every Hero Has a Story.
Okay.
And one of the things that a lot of people were doing was putting in superheroes into the schedule of their of the summer reading program for the libraries, which I thought was amazing. It was great. They were doing like superhero parties and everything else. And I always kind of want to stand out a little bit. I always want to do something a little bit different from the pack. So the story that I tell that kind of relates to that is I have these characters in my story, and it's always kind of the same. It's almost like, where Invincible has its own universe, my stories always have their own universe with the same characters kind of interacting. So the story's basically about how, there's a flying bicycle, and one of the kids gets stuck on this flying bicycle, and the girls who lived across the street from him have to go up and help save him. So it's not really a superhero story in the traditional sense, but it is a hero story where something happens and somebody has to rise up to the occasion to save them.
Yeah, just because you're a superhero doesn't mean you have superpowers.
Exactly, yeah. Look at Batman.
Yeah, look at Batman. I mean, he's got a super big wallet and, bank
Can I ask, whenever there's an argument of who would win, right, everybody will always say, well, with enough time and preparation, Batman would win. That is one of the most aggravating statements because they're always like, yeah, well, Batman can just think his way out of any situation with enough time and preparation. Well, that's not an answer. That's not fair.
Listen, I get a lot of heat for this. I'm not the biggest Batman fan. I love Batman in his own world. Like, I like Batman in Gotham with the Joker and the Riddler, and, you got Barbara over there and Tim and Dick over there, and, I like it like where they're all kind of like non-superpowered things. But to me, once Superman lands in Gotham, everything should just stop. Because Superman's like, I can clean the city up in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
So I'd never like when you see the Justice League, you see Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman, Aquaman, Green Lantern, and then like Batman should not be at the front line. He's a human. That's why I like Kingdom Come, because he's kind of like in the background. He's got these drones. He's like, he should be in the JLA watchtower all the time.
Right.
He shouldn't be like, yeah, I'll stand next to you, Superman. No, you're not going to stand next to me. If Superman and Batman ever got in a real fight, he would just zap him or just toss him. Like, the Joker should not exist in the DC universe with a Superman in there.
The ultimate, with enough time and preparation is the Dark Knight Returns, Frank Miller's classic, where he had, 40 years to get ready for this fight that he was eventually going to have with Superman. In his head, it was going to happen. So he has this suit that he constructed to specifically have a fight with Superman. But again, that takes, years and years in the future where he had this whole thing ready to go. And I think that's where it kind of comes from. But he's just a regular guy. So when all these things happen, he can't just stand on the front line and be like, no, I got this. Hold on, shields up.
No, he sits in the background on his communicator and say, listen, guys, there's a weakness, and over there, you go for it. Okay, cool, thanks, Batman. Not like, hey, when do you want to come out and help me? You want to get a swing in there? No, it's just not going to... I mean, I'm not knocking about... I love Batman, but I like him in his own little pocket.
Like you, one of your favorite characters, my good friend Bill, one of his favorite characters, and since I've been reading it, really enjoying it, the Silver Surfer, right?
Oh, I love Norman Rad. I love him.
When they say Silver Surfer versus Batman, and people go, well, with enough time and preparation, you go, absolutely not. But, like, Silver Surfer is a celestial being. Like, you can't have a human take on a celestial being with enough time and preparation They were like, he would find out that his power source comes from, and it was, no.
No, eventually, and hopefully sooner than later, we're going to do a podcast just on Silver Surfer, because I absolutely love that character.
Yeah, well, can I ask, this will be like a preview into that, but the Volume 3 that was written by Ron Lim or drawn by Ron Lim and then Jim Starlin, right? And the whole thing that I'm reading is brilliant. Up until we get to the hundreds where George Perez takes over. Do you remember?
When that stuff came out, I was already done. That was after I was out of high school, I think. I wasn't collecting. I remember looking for issue 100, back issues, and then I was done. Like I have them all, but I bought them later on. I never read them. I don't think I read past 100.
I met George Perez at a Comic-Con.
Wonderful man. Love George Perez. Love his work.
And talked to him, and he is probably one of the most approachable,
awesome,
nicest, sweetest guys out there.
And his work on Teen Titans is some of the best stuff that's ever been done in this industry. I love his Teen Titans.
And as an artist, I mean, he's quick and he's funny, and he just seems to really be in it, to love this. He loves everything. Well, his run on the Silver Surfer, which starts at 111, and right now I think I'm up to 116. But the last 4 or 5 issues that I've been reading have been a chore to get through. I don't know what he was thinking, but the issue, his Silver Surfer run was a mistake.
Well, keep in mind too, that was during when the comic craze had gone away in the late 90s. It was during it. They were just kind of putting books out. There was a lot of those books at that time were not well done because the industry was bad, and the glory days of the comic industry in the late 80s, early 90s was long gone.
Well, he wasn't even drawing it though; he was just writing.
Yeah,
it.
No.
So you don't even get to see the beauty of George's art. You just get to hear his words, and maybe this was his first foray into writing. I'm not sure.
I don't remember, but I know I have. Like I said, I have the issues. They're probably going to be permanently bagged and boarded just to complete my run. Yeah. I got rid of most of my books, but I always keep my Surfer run, especially that. I love the '90s Silver Surfer #1, that cover with Galactus and FF. That's one of my favorite covers of all time.
Yeah.
And of course, the whole when Jim Starlin comes in and the Infinity Gauntlet and Thanos stuff and Impossible Man, all that stuff, and it's fun. It's not just it's also fun. People don't realize how fun that book is. That's why I like Invincible so much. It's fun. Now everything's so dark and devastating. Whatever happened, and if it's fun now, it's too fun. It's it has to be. It's a nice mixture. Works.
But that's the thing. There's the heavy-handedness of these battles, which, battling in itself it's a very violent and scary act there. So there's not a whole lot of fun to be had in a war, there's a lot of, when you as a person, getting into a skirmish is never fun. Even if it's just a shouting match with somebody, you're never sitting there, enjoying the moment. So, you're reading it like you're a spectator, and spectators have a lot more fun with it if it doesn't look like one side is, that worried about it. And Mark, even though that he's worried about it, when he keeps it light and keeps on making funny remarks during the fight, and again, like Peter Parker always did, where he always kind of threw in a barb, just to aggravate the person.
Yes, Mark is basically like Superman with Parker's sense of humor,
and it makes it so much more fun to read.
Yeah, Kirkman's a great writer, man. I love, Walking Dead, and I've only read Walking Dead and Invincible. I've never read any of the other stuff, but the stuff, I'm sure Outcast is great, but it's a very different type of book. But these books are great. I mean, he knows what he's doing, and he's very well respected. And again, I'm not trying to preach, buy this book, but it's a fun book. I challenge any Spider-Man fan to buy this and not enjoy it. I'm not saying you have to love it, but you should at least enjoy it.
Now, you said that you don't read it currently.
Well, I do. When we get them in, I flip through it. I kind of half read. I know what's going on. I you can figure it out. I don't actually sit down and read it but I know I flip through it enough to go through it. And I always talk to the guys who do read it, so I to keep up with it.
Yeah, well, see, so I took off, I was reading it regularly, and then the Viltrumite War really did kind of hit a sore spot with me.
But you know what, though? I don't think it'll hit a sore spot with people now because it's all in trade form. So I think if you just read it as a trade, you wouldn't even notice because there's no delay.
True. So it definitely might read better now. But, it took me out of the book where I stopped reading it for a while. And then I picked it up again about 103. And from 103 on, I mean, the stories are great.
Oh, the stories are great. The Adam Eve part of it is amazing.
Yeah. And you, like you said, now a while ago they did a 25-cent issue. And it was so disappointing because the way that they're going right now, is good if you're reading it and you're into the story and you're like, okay, I know exactly what's going on and what led up to this. But like you said, the 25-cent issue was meant to get a couple more readers onto the book. Read this book. But what was the cover?
Yeah, it was awful.
It was Mark and Adam Eve and the kid all flying in a super happy moment. And you're like, that's not really going to get people to
No, it should have been a very... And listen, all the power to Kirkman, he's like, I'm going to put this out, this is what I want to put out. But if you're truly trying to... you're really putting out for a quarter, obviously you're not making any money, you're probably losing money on it. To try and get more readers in, it's not a very attractive... it's kind of like going on a first date with someone. You're going to clean yourself up, look good, put on, some extra makeup or... certain clothing or whatever. You're not just going to show up in, your t-shirt and shorts. I mean, you might, but I mean, anybody else might dress up a little bit.
Listen, when you look this way, you don't need to impress with clothes.
Yeah, because clothes ain't going to fix that.
Wait, no. I was going the other direction. Anyways, there was one funny moment in Invincible, which I really liked, because Mark is a comic book reader. So, after fighting all these aliens and everything, he was gone for months and months, and he went to go pick up his subscriptions.
Oh, that's right. That's where that, what's his name? What's Wolfman? Is that his name? No, not Wolfman. What's the character? That's a comic book character, but it's also a real character.
I believe that was, wasn't that Wolf?
No. It's a comic book character that he reads regularly, but it's actually, he actually ends up meeting him, remember? Yes,
okay.
I can't think of the name, but there's a comic book character that Mark gets a pull for, say Spider-Man, and eventually that character actually exists in the superhero realm that he lives in, which is kind of funny.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because every early Image book that you read always has a dig at Marvel. There's always something where they say something or they show something, and it's an obvious insult to the Marvel way. And it was funny because now the Image Marvel war seems so antiquated. Who cares? Image is doing their thing, Marvel's doing their thing.
Well, Image is a very different company now, though, so they don't... back then it was blatantly they split... It's almost like it was a part of Marvel back in the day, and it was... Now it's like that stuff, so Image is perceived very differently. It's looked at as the independent, hip stuff to be reading. You know what I mean? As with back then, it was just creators making Marvel characters on their own and getting paid for it.
But it's funny because there's an obvious dig in Invincible at Marvel where he goes to pick up, these new books and he's like, oh, what's these, why are these all at number one again? And he's like, oh, they rebooted the thing to try to get more sales. And I think Mark even says, why don't they just write better stories? And they don't have to keep rebooting at number one just to get more readers. If the stories are there, then the readers will be there. And they're like, yeah, they haven't figured that out yet. But they don't say Marvel. They don't say Marvel, but it's an obvious dig at Marvel.
Yeah, because DC's only done it once, and it was an entire system relaunch, which is why it was successful, where Marvel was just like, Marvel won't even change the writing and art teams. They'll just reboot it at number 1. It's like, what? If you got to reboot it, you got to reboot it. You just can't put a number 1 on it. But that's what they do.
Even Mark Waid had tweeted out that moment where Incredible Hulk was on this, or is it Indestructible Hulk that he was writing at the time, and all of a sudden they rebooted it to Incredible Hulk. Or no, they rebooted it to just Hulk. So
yes.
They took out Incredible, as they say, they took out the Incredible out of the title and put it in the book. So
that is the worst. Did they actually say that?
Yeah, they did.
In this day and age, this is not 1940. This is like now.
So Waid.
No, wait. I'm sorry. Did that actually happen?
Yes, it happened.
I'm sorry that. Okay, I'm trying to like soak that. I picture like a 1940s billboard. That's why I'm just sorry. I'm trying to get back up into when we are now. Okay, go ahead. What happened?
But even Mark Waid had tweeted out that if you think that the latest reboot of the Incredible Hulk there was unnecessary, you're not alone. Something along those lines of it was. Literally, the reboot issue, the number 1 issue, was the aftermath of what happened in issue number 12 of the earlier series. So it was literally the next issue. It was written like it should just be the next issue, but Marvel rebooted it instead. And yeah, I mean, it was one of those things where you were like, why? Just keep these numbers going. Like I was always proud that Incredible Hulk didn't have a 7 through 101. Like it was so cool because you're collecting the Hulk. There is no 7 to 101. But then when they rebooted it, now there's a 7 through 101 in volume 2?
Yeah, the volume Hulk, the Planet Hulk volume.
Yeah, and so it was. It's always been disappointing to me that they.
But to go on the other side, Planet Hulk started in the 80s. Issue 82 was it? First Planet Hulk.
90s, but yeah.
Was it 90s?
It was not. Yeah, it started. The Prelude started in like 92.
Okay, so 92. So those missing issues actually they made up for it. But I know that the Bruce Jones are also in those numbers, so I know. There's good and bad, but people don't act like that never happened. So in a way, there's still not those numbers.
That's true.
And for all you guys who don't realize what we're talking about, because it was a long time ago, Hulk was 6 issues, and then DC was actually distributing books for Marvel at the time because Marvel was still not at the top, so they could only have a certain amount of titles per month. So what they did was they did split. They did it like a Tales to Astonish, Tales of Suspense with more than one character in it, and Hulk split the title with Giant Man at the time. And eventually became Hulk and Submariner, right?
It was, yeah, the Hulk had his own title but couldn't sustain it.
Yeah, and they put him in Tales.
Canceled that, and people were still writing and inquiring about the Hulk, and they were like, see, people still love the character. Apparently he doesn't have enough readers to have his own title. So yeah, then they originally put him in Tales to Astonish with Giant Man, and then all of a sudden they turned it to Hulk and Submariner.
Yeah, but at the time though they couldn't have their own titles because of that distribution problem. And later on, it branched out and they got. That's why the funny thing though is they kept the numbering because back in the day, number 1s weren't always a good thing. So right. they kept the numbering of Hulk with the Tales to Astonish, and Tales of Suspense had Captain America and Iron Man. They gave Iron Man a number 1, and Captain America, which is a stronger seller, they kept him at 100 going on.
Isn't that funny though? Yeah, Submariner got the number 1, and the Hulk started at 102.
Yes. So when you look at a first issue of Hulk, a lot of people, because they can't afford Incredible Hulk number 1, because it's going to cost you like a car payment or an actual brand new car, you get. Yeah, house. So you get the 102, which is affordable, and it's still a big premiere number 1 issue.
Yeah,
it's cool. I love that stuff because those were like pre-hero titles that just kept going. Because there's some books in the Silver Age for DC that don't even have number 1s, like Atom, Hawkman, Metalman, and Aquaman. They don't have number ones. They're just like book, because number one was actually like a turnoff at that time, which is very funny.
It is funny how
now everything has a number one, even if it's not a number one. They just put a number one on it.
I think even Invincible kind of again played like that little funny tongue-in-cheek almost, where it was in the hundreds, but it said like number one, and then like
it was it was 101, wasn't it 101?
Well, there was a little subtitle under it. It was like number one superhero comic, out there right now, and so it looked like they were numbering it number one, but it was actually just them touting that. It was,
and they still it still says on the top the world's greatest superhero comic or some world's best superhero comic, which FF said for years, even though it hadn't been the number one superhero book for decades. It's funny. It looks like a traditional comic, how it would be. Like, it looks like a Marvel, like, 1960s book.
Now, speaking of FF, have you seen the new movie?
No, I wanted to see it because I'm a diehard FF fan. My time is very limited. I didn't get a chance to see it. And now that I've looked into it more and more, I don't think I'm going to see it.
It's good. I mean, the reviews are great. Have you seen it?
I don't think I'm going to see it. It's not because I'm trying to be a hater. It's already come and gone, and I don't think I need to see it. I mean, if it's on, I'll see it, but I might just skip it. I was really gonna see it because I'm like, listen, I'm an FF guy. I really do enjoy the first two. I have no problem. I know people hate them. I don't have a problem. I mean, are they great movies? No, but I enjoy them because I'm an FF guy. They feel like FF. FF is never gonna work right because FF is very Brady Bunchy, family-y, not Batman dark. So you can't really put it on the... FF's going to work better as a TV show.
Take away Cloud Galactus, and the second movie is actually really good. Like, they do Silver Surfer really well.
They do Surfer well. Doom shouldn't have been in there, and Doom was just annoying. But the Galactus Cloud, I don't have a super big problem with, because that was a no-win situation, because if they showed Galactus standing there, anybody who's not comic booky would have been like, that. What is this guy doing in the sky? And so I don't know if you could ever really technically show Galactus, because he's not like Thanos. You know what I mean? It's different. So I don't have a problem with the Cloud thing. But I thought Surfer was very well done. I thought he looked great. The problem I have with the FFs has been technically, 4 FF, maybe 5 FF movies? Because there was the two, the one that never came out, and the FF one. But wasn't there another one?
There was a Roger Corman.
That never came out technically.
No, there's been 4.
But I think there was one earlier, like in the 60s. Like a show. I don't know what it was. But anyways, every single FF movie is basically an origin story with Doom.
Right.
That don't do that. That's why I don't like Superman movies. It's always Luthor, like, why? Just FF has fought so many different villains, and I know Doom's the ultimate villain, but you know what? Give it a rest. You know, even as highly praised as Joker is, he's only been in 2 of the movies.
Yeah, but you can't. You also have to do Doom right. Like,
yeah,
you can't play a lot with his origin, and you can't play a lot with his character, because in the comics it's so brilliantly written. You know, he is a dictator to this island land, and you can't all of a sudden just make him Reed's peer, who they have like a falling out. The whole brilliant thing is that Doom is the second smartest person in the Marvel Universe to Reed. Yeah. Reed is the smartest person, and it drives the egomaniac Doom nuts that he can't ever outthink Reed. Reed is always one step ahead of him in a way where, okay, well, this is Doom's latest plan, and he knows that the one person who can outthink him is Reed. And so it's brilliant. Like, the whole dynamic between them is absolutely brilliant. But you can't play a lot with it where you make them like best friends who then have like a falling out.
You can do that if you do it in like 8 seasons of a TV show.
Yeah. but still, you can't play a lot with what Doom is.
No, because it's very similar to the Xavier and Eric, Magneto thing, but it's also, they have they're on agendas though. it's different. Where Doom is just, on par with Reed. It's just that Reed keeps slapping him. It's a little different. I know you have to go because
I do have to go.
You have to leave, but I just want to let real quick. I watched Goonies last night with Isabella, and she watched most of it, even though she's only 3, and she seemed very interested in it. So I'm very happy that she got exposed to Goonies.
I had Alexandra watching that. Alexandra's 6 now. She watched it a couple years ago when Nicholas, my nephew, was over, and we all watched it together. And it's funny because you don't realize, and it doesn't bother me so much, but the language that's in the movie, and I know that we don't like to curse too much here, but Chunk, even like his first scene, and he's like, car chase, and then all of a sudden things happen, and he's like, bleep, and all I kept thinking was, man, I don't remember this much language.
No, because when you were a kid, you were just watching the Goonies, That's all it was. So, Ryan, a pleasure always. Thank you for talking Invincible. And I love this, truly love this book. I'm glad you do too.
Yes, and like I said, it's gotten back on track. So, if you ever were thinking about picking it up, this is the best time to do it.
Yes, definitely. All right, Ryan, have fun. I'll talk to you soon, buddy.
All right, later.
Be good. Guys, take care. Always a pleasure. See you at the store.
Zapp Comics Radio Podcast. Zapp Comics Radio